Welcome my fellow gamers, I'm the Body Counter, and today I'll be sharing with you all the maps that could make an appearance in the Apocolypse DLC in Battlefield 1. As of today, of me finishing this video, DICE have released new info on the DLC Turning Tides. The maps, the guns, the new elite kit and more have been confirmed. So I decided to look at the next expansion and share with you some map ideas that would fit into the Apocolypse DLC. The first two maps I have in mind would introduce the Canadian Expeditionary Forces into Battlefield 1. The first map being the Battle of Arras, a British offensive that lasted from April to May of 1917. One of the most iconic features of this battle, I hope would be featured, is the underground tunnel fights that took place beneath the surface of the battlefield. Around 150,000 allies were killed, wounded or captured. The Germans suffered around 125,000 casualties. If Arras were to be featured as an Apocalypse map, I would love for half the map to be focused on no man's land, long-range engagements and close-range trench encounters, and the other half focus on the heart-racing, close-range combat inside the tunnel network below no man's land. A flag system, both on the surface and below, would be very unique as both sides will have to maintain control of the tunnels and the surface. Both tanks and planes could be included, but especially planes. I also came up with the idea that certain tunnels could be caved in from the inside and outside by dynamite and even bomber payloads, hindering movement and flanking opportunities for a certain side. Doing this would add a bit more levolution to the game. The second map idea for the list is a conflict that took place during the Battle of Arras, but still stands to this day as one of the most significant battles for the Canadian troops. The Battle of Vimy Ridge. A fight between primarily Canadian forces plus British against the Germans during April of 1917. The Allies received a total of 10,600 casualties during the battle, while German casualties are still up to debate this day. The Canadian forces were tasked with claiming the German-held high ground. 4 days of fighting would result in a hard-fought victory for the Canadians. As a map, I wouldn't be surprised that much of the terrain would be flat, with many craters for cover and fields of barbed wire hindering movement, plus the inclusion of the actual ridge that would be the closest objective to the German side. Trenches, mainly on the Canadian side, would help balance the fact that the Germans have the high ground. Tanks would be acceptable to implement into the map, as they could serve both sides well in dislodging the Germans on the high ground and the Canadians in the trenches. The next map will almost definitely be in the last DLC, the First Battle of the Somme in 1916, resulting in a combined total of over 1 million deaths from both sides of the conflict. The Battle of the Somme was the first battle in which the British Mark I tanks would fight through no man's land in an attempt to break through German-held lines. Nearly a third of the tanks deployed were successful. I wouldn't blame DICE for not including the Mark I as a reskinned Mark IV landship, but it would be a great aesthetic change to see during the time period. Through the offensive, the Allies failed to claim the village of Perron. A great way to structure the map and make it more diverse from being a solely no man's land layout would be to have half the map originate on the border of Perron, so half of the conflict would be an Amiens style environment, and the other half being the cratered and barbed wire landscape. This is kind of stretching the truth of the battle a little, but this wouldn't be the first time DICE have done this before. The German base would be positioned deep within Perron, and the British further out in the blood-soaked lands. This next map I really hope makes it into the DLC, the Battle of Caporetto, or also known as the 12th Battle of the Isonzo. It was an offensive during 1917 between Italy and the Austro-Hungarian and German empires. The battle started with artillery and gas attacks, and through the use of shock troopers, the Central Powers were able to break through Italian lines. Caporetto would be known to Italy as one of their greatest defeats. Italian casualties were 40,000, but over 250,000 were captured by the end of the battle, while the Central Powers only suffered 70,000 casualties. As a map, I could see some aesthetic similarities to Monte Grappa, but not too many, such as plants, roads and cliffs. I'd imagine the terrain would be more manageable for tanks. Also, it would be best to have an Italian versus Austro-Hungarian map without planes for a change, and focus more on infantry. Some key environmental features I'd like to see would be large dug-ins throughout the many trenches to offer some flanking routes in the narrow paths of some cliff faces. On the few high locations, such as peaks and small cliffs, field guns would make for great defensive artillery against the attacking Austro-Hungarians. Something worth adding is the site of the initial attack, the magnificent Isonzo River, during wartime. Now these last two maps are not as noticed as compared to the previously discussed maps, but deserve a feature as they include the one Central Power nation we haven't seen yet, Bulgaria. First of these lesser known battles is the Battle of Manastir, a conflict during 1917 between Bulgarian and German troops against the French and Russian expeditionary soldiers. The French casualties number around 15,000, while Central Powers killed and wounded remain up to debate to this day. The Battle of Manastir was a part of the French Commander-in-Chief's planned spring offensive in the region. The plan involved attacking Doiran, Surnar Bend, and the outskirts of the city of Manastir. For the French commander, the offensive was unsuccessful. The Bulgarians were able to withstand the numerous allied attacks. The French made few gains, but the Bulgarians counterattacked and won their positions back. If DICE were to put in the Battle of Manastir into the game, the map would resemble the terrain of Soissons and St. Quentin Scar. Open engagements with lush trees and long brown grassy fields to lay prone in. I can see this map being heavily plain infantry and cavalry based, especially cavalry, much like the new Galicia map. Though, since the Battle of Manastir was a series of conflicts, one particular battle, which could incorporate a large village into the map to create a bit more diversity, would be the Battle of Hill 1248, as this area harboured a well-fortified Bulgarian village encampment. Finally on the list is a smaller battle which can be linked to the previous map into an operation, much like Vimy Ridge and Arras are. The Battle of Doiran. A part of the Allies' campaigns on the Macedonian front, the battle was fought between the British and Bulgarians. The Allies' intent on the campaign was to simply deal enough damage to Bulgaria and break through their territory and push them back. As mentioned before, they were unsuccessful, and the Bulgarians won the day. During the Battle of Doiran, Bulgaria had a total of 2,000 killed and wounded, while the British lost a hefty sum of 12,000. It was much harder to find information on Bulgarian battles during World War I for this video, so I have no real knowledge about specifically where major clashes occurred during Doiran, aside from the battle occurring near Lake Doiran. But if DICE want to stretch the realism of the battle slightly, we can have the battle occur from both sides of the lake. British start on one side of the river and the Bulgarians on the other side. Torpedo boats, or even the new wide-lighter troop boat, would be great for use on the lake. Aside from boats, aircraft could make an appearance for both sides. I hope you enjoyed my video. Having previously learnt of these battles before Battlefield 1's release made it much easier for me to do research and get all the information together. I'm hoping that DICE do release 6 maps instead of 4 for Apocolypse, even if they do what they Shut Up Past did and release 2 extra maps later on, but by then less people will be playing the DLC. The addition of 2 nations would be amazing, especially Bulgaria, and with these 2 new nations it could bring 2 new operations as well. Fairly soon I'll be making another brainstorming video on what weapons we could see in the final DLC. If you've got any particular battles in mind for the last DLC, let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed and agreed with the list, leave a like, subscribe to keep up to date when I upload next, and as always, continue gaming on.